Hey, this is Surfline Director of Forecasting, Mark Willis. We're back on the Outer Banks. I'm with Kurt Corte, lead forecaster, and we continue to monitor very dangerous Hurricane Florence. Hurricane Florence is bearing down on the Carolinas right now, just 145 miles east-southeast of Wilmington. Rain bands already impacting the Outer Banks. We've already had reports of power outages for parts of the Crystal Coast in Carteret County, and there's also ocean overwash occurring for parts of the Outer Banks as well. Pretty dangerous situation and a lot to talk about because there's a lot of waves up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, there certainly is, and we've kind of been geeking out on some of the cams in southeastern North Carolina today. But great surf to start off down in Florida. Actually, there's been some fun waves down there. Looking at the Fort Pierce cam, the buoy that's right offshore there, showing right around. Let's see, let me pull that thing up here. Showing right around 5 feet at 12 seconds out of the east-northeast. So the swell direction has shifted a little bit from what we've seen in the past couple of days, where it was east or even east-southeast, because of the location of Florence several days ago. Now that the swell directions turn more east-northeast, definitely getting in a little bit better into Fort Pierce and even some of the spots down the Treasure Coast and Palm Beach as well.
Yeah, and some of the Canaveral buoys had some pretty impressive numbers. Looks like it's already started to come down there, but last evening and overnight, the outer Canaveral buoy was anywhere between 9 and 12 feet at 16 to 17 seconds, so pretty impressive numbers there for the Canaveral buoy, and just a little bit smaller as it moved into that inner Canaveral buoy. So quite a swell that's impacting Florida. And again, looks like things are starting to come down a little bit. But as we move up into Melbourne Beach, Florida, Mike Watson had told us there was plenty of well overhead waves there this morning.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's actually off from working the past week or so, and he pinged in really quick, I think, on his way out into the water, and gave us a nice report before taking his days off and taking advantage of some of the surf there in Melbourne Beach. Fun surf, conditions still pretty clean even as we approach midday here. Obviously there's some tide issues at some breaks, but all in all, pretty fun surf, especially considering the lack of waves that they had through a good portion of the summer.
And based on the track of Florence and the buoy numbers upstream that are coming down, looks like the swell will continue to fade through tomorrow, but it should be really fun. So be sure to check out our regional forecast for all the details as the swell from Hurricane Florence continues, but does start to continue to ease down in the Sunshine State. Let's work our way up towards where kind of ground zero into the Carolinas. South Carolina right now, they're kind of out of the main impacts from Hurricane Florence at this point, but they've got some waves, maybe not quite as, if you just looked at the buoy offshore, the Edisto buoy, that is showing some fairly substantial swell. You might expect the surf to be larger than it is, but again, we've been talking about this for several days now. The bathymetry there really likes to beat things down, but regardless, there's some fun kind of chest to occasional head high surf with good conditions there.
Yeah, not the ideal situation. Really for South Carolina, what you would like is some shorter periods south to southeast wind swell. And, a lot of times that occurs when you have kind of a low coming out of the Gulf and moving up the southeast coast. Obviously some good surf there, but really you have a category hurricane that's relatively close by. You would think it would be bigger than it is, but that's the glory of South Carolina surf, I guess. But fun waves, you can see there's a little bit of current working down the beach with that swell direction. Some good lefts coming through south side of the pier, and favorable conditions.
That's right, and of course the winds are north-northwest there because it's kind of on the backside of the storm right now. In Carolina Beach in southern North Carolina, New Hanover County, this is where it starts to look quite a bit more dramatic, and we've seen several sets break over the rocks and water kind of pushing in, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon here. This part of the coast and through the Crystal Coast got a long ways to go with battering Hurricane Florence.
Yes, and it's really interesting because this is a stretch that they do a lot of beach replenishment every few years in Carolina Beach, and obviously they haven't done it recently, but it's definitely hitting up against the rocks there. Hopefully the cam stays online. Obviously if we lose power or internet, it's going to go down, but pretty dramatic scenes, and I actually just tweaked some of the presets with this cam here to kind of get a good feel for exactly what's happening. But you see a lot of action there in Carolina Beach.
And probably our most dramatic cam right now is Hurriane and Pier at Atlantic Beach. And again, I have had some reports that there have already been some power outages in that area, but right now not in this part of Atlantic Beach. And again, this is one of the most dramatic scenes that we've seen so far, with surf well overhead, probably double overhead plus on some of those sets, breaking on the outside of that pier, and obviously strong kind of side offshore winds as well.
Exactly. So the coastline, kind of changes as you head up towards Atlantic Beach and faces more south. So those the winds there a little more offshore than what we were seeing in Carolina Beach, but obviously some very large surf. There's the offshore buoys there, showing anywhere from. What was the offshore swell you were talking about? A few minutes
the
ago?
outer Onslow buoy was coming in around 20 to 23 feet. The last couple of obs at around 15 seconds. So
not small
at all. And obviously some of that's getting broken down before it reaches the coast. But again, I don't know, how big would you say some of those faces are, Kurt, if somebody put a gun to your head?
Well, I think I heard you pull out a 15-foot one a little earlier, didn't you? So I would, if my job's at stake here, I guess I'm going to say it's 15 feet. But every bit of double overhead for sure, and the amount of current and drift, and the fact that. When this happens on the Outer Banks, you got to think, you're probably going to have some walkways that are knocked out, and you're going to have floating, pieces of wood and all kinds of crazy stuff in the lineup. And I'm sure that's occurring here. But I would give it every bit of, double overhead, 10-foot faces, even bigger than that, I'm sure, especially with that offshore, swell showing as strong as it is.
And Surfline obviously has a lot of friends and colleagues in that area throughout that whole entire zone from northern South Carolina through the Crystal Coast. And we're thinking of you guys and gals down there. Very dangerous situation. The rainfall forecast really hasn't changed much for that area, 15 to 20 inches plus. Obviously a storm surge and a wind threat as well. And we also have a tornado watch for much of eastern North Carolina as well. So we're obviously thinking of our friends and colleagues down in southern North Carolina. We hope you the best. Once you get into the Outer Banks, surf is a little bit different, but still plenty of size.
Yes, no shortage of waves here, but of course we have pretty strong onshore winds. We had a little rain band that moved through earlier today. Definitely stronger winds onshore down towards the Buxton area, and of course the surf is pretty much blown out down there. And we've seen some reports of some ocean overwash already impacting Highway 12.
And by the way, Kurt also optimized the cam view on our North Buxton cam to kind of look south there, because there is a prone part of the coastline just in view of our cam where you can actually see, I'm looking at it right now, ocean overwash occurring and beginning to impact some of those structures and motels and things like that down there. So very dangerous situation there. And again, as Kurt mentioned, also reports of overwash throughout much of the region in Hatteras Island. And we're going to change moods here a little bit, because we're going to go to a little bit further north, and we're looking at Lincoln Boulevard right now, very close to where the Unsound Pro is actually on today. And man, they've got some good conditions.
Yes, it seems like they score pretty much every year, but I guess if you're going to do it the second week of September, it's a pretty good time to have a contest on the East Coast. But they just did some beach replenishment. You can see the beaches significantly changed from what we saw earlier this summer. It actually looks pretty cool. On the side of the little groin there, you kind of have a little left that's eroded down some of that beach they put in, and kind of a nice little left rolling through. You'd really enjoy that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was watching some guys get swept down the beach and they're paddling out when I was doing the Dawn Patrol reports this morning. That didn't look very fun, but if you're in the right place, man, it looks like you could get a really long, kind of fast left there, and very, very tasty for the goofy footers for sure.
Well, Rob's the one that gets swept down the beach. You're the one that
That's right. It's very important to watch the surf for a little bit before you paddle out. Rob Mitztai for the youngin. That day at Nags Head that Kurt's talking about, I think he got swept a couple miles down the beach.
Caught up in the pilings of the pier.
The other place that has really good waves right now is in Rhode Island. We're looking at Matunic right now, and the winds look like they may be getting a little funkier than this morning, but it was definitely kind of northeast offshore early this morning, surf in the 4 to 6 foot zone. But since that time, we've seen sets well overhead, and looking pretty fun there as well. But again, not quite as good as it was a couple hours ago.
Yeah, so the swell is expected to pulse in there through the day today. Winds this morning were going to favor the more southerly facing beaches, but as we head through the day, it looked like more easterly winds were going to set up, but still not super strong. So I expect there to be manageable conditions for many locations this afternoon, even though it's not going to be as favorable as it was this morning.
So that wraps up our conditions update for the East Coast, thanks to the situation with Hurricane Florence. And we're going to probably do one more of these tomorrow. And if you have any feedback, send us a line at forecast_feedback@surfline.com. Once again, I'm Surfline Director of Forecasting Mark Willis with lead forecaster Kirk Horte with our ongoing coverage of extremely dangerous Hurricane Florence.